Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. We have an NBA mock draft on the channel today, and last time I simulated the lottery, had a ton of fun doing that, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to simulate the lottery again today. It kind of keeps things fresh in this NBA draft cycle, especially when we're talking about mock drafts, and which teams could potentially be picking at the top. Kind of gives us a little bit of a window into what could potentially happen on NBA draft lottery night. Of course, one of the most important nights of the year. So let's go ahead and sim the lottery right now. The team with the first overall pick is the Toronto Raptors. We have 4 teams actually move up in the lottery, which is insane. Absolute insanity. The Toronto Raptors picking first, Indiana picking second. That's a sneaky fun team to talk about in that spot. What would they look to do? We'll talk about that. Portland jumps up to number 3. Definitely an interesting situation. Utah at 4. And then, of course, the rest would go by record at that spot, where Houston, Detroit, San Antonio, Charlotte, Orlando, Washington, the Pelicans via the Lakers, OKC picks 12th. Orlando picks 13th from the Chicago Bulls pick. And then the Lakers themselves, with the Pelicans' recent fall, now find themselves also picking in the lottery, only 3 spots lower than where their pick would have slated them. So definitely an interesting lottery. So now let's jump over and get to the actual mock draft. I'm very excited for it. All right, so here we are. Just a quick reminder before we jump into that actual mock that I will be live on the channel pretty much all week long covering the NBA trade deadline, and that this mock draft is an NBA trade deadline special meant to, get your guys' attention about potential draft picks, guys that, if your team trades for draft picks, this is the important time of the year to start learning some of these prospects. And I also want you to know that if your team does trade for a pick in this video, and of course I'm recording this video before the trade deadline, if there's some crazy moves that happen and you want to know maybe who your team would draft in that spot, let me know in the comment section. I will be responding to all of those types of comments. Just say, hey, at utility, let me know who you think this team X would pick at this spot, given the fact that they just traded for this selection. So now let's go ahead and jump forward here with pick number 1. Again, we did this lottery style. So the Toronto Raptors moved up to pick number 1. This is not out of the realm of possibility. The Raptors could be big time sellers this trade deadline. I'm really excited to talk about the Raptors during my trade deadline special, not only with this first overall pick, but also with the potential avenues of trading away guys like OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr. It's possible we see the Toronto Raptors enter the tank for Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, which is exactly what they do here. And they add Victor Wembanyama first overall in the draft, no question about it. Vic is going to be the first overall pick in this year's draft, and the Raptors luck into the first overall pick here in this lottery simulation. How good of a fit is he into Toronto? Pretty much perfect. I think the one thing about Toronto over the last 3-4 years that you can say is, how consistent are their center minutes going to be? You think back to when they won the NBA title, they had a phenomenal front court with the trio of Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, and Pascal Siakam, a very young Pascal Siakam at that time. But Nick Nurse was really innovating the front court with the way that, based on matchups, he was playing one of those 3 more or less than typical, and he was very good at adjusting the lineups around that. Now he just doesn't have the front court depth that he used to. Getting a guy like Victor Wembanyama would go a very long way, not only in Toronto becoming very, very good again, but also the dominance of that front court between Vic and Pascal Siakam would be a lot of fun to watch for sure. And if you're a Raptors fan, you want to see this happen, let's get a hashtag We the North in the comment section right now. Jumping into pick number 2, we have the Indiana Pacers here. Of course, a team that we could see potentially jump up in the lottery as well. During the time that they missed Tyrese Halliburton, they struggled. And part of the reason why is they don't really have a secondary creator on this team. Now, TJ McConnell's a player who could potentially be traded this trade deadline. I think there's some teams that would be interested in him for sure. So if they were to trade him, he's having a very nice season, by the way, McConnell is. I really enjoy watching TJ McConnell play. If they were to trade him, another guard is a need. And now I know this is a little clunky next to Tyrese Halliburton. You say, is this for sure the perfect move? For Indiana, it's all about talent acquisition. Scoot Henderson is the no-brainer second overall pick. I already have a scouting profile up on the channel on Scoot Henderson. I'll try to link that here now with the card. We'll see if I remember to do that when I'm editing. But the one thing I really like about Scoot Henderson here for Indiana, it gives you another guy who you can put the ball in his hands, trust that he's not only going to be able to knock down shots, make plays for himself, but he also makes the right play for others. That's one thing that he's really improved at within the last 12 months. He's really grown as a facilitator. He's somebody who can get others involved. He reads the court. The game is slowing down for him. You see it. And for somebody as young as he is, I think he steps into the NBA on night one, and he's a potential 20-8 type of guy. And I'm talking 20 points, 8 assists. He's got that type of skill set. You think about the trio of Benedict Mathurin, Scoot Henderson, Tyrese Halliburton. Oh my goodness. Watch out, Pacers fans. If you were able to end up swinging something like this, it could be the beginning of the end for a lot of other NBA franchises. Pick number 3, we have Portland now at this pick, and this is going to be a very controversial selection in this video. So bear with me here for just a little bit, because I think it's very important that you guys fully listen to my rationale with what I go with here, because I think there's quite a bit that goes into this that you guys have to, be willing to understand. We're making the adjustment to Brandon Miller 3rd overall. Of course, the Blazers moving up to 3rd helps solidify the rationale for this as well. Of course, they're a little bit more wing needy than guard needy at this point, given the existence of Dame Lillard, Anthony Simons on the roster, as well as you look at another guard off the bench like Gary Payton II. It's clearly much more evident that Portland could use a scoring wing. They've been tied to guys like Kevin Durant in the past when it comes to trade rumors. Landing the 3rd overall pick could potentially help them when it comes to making a trade this offseason if they were to look to move this pick. But the one thing I really like about Brandon Miller, he is an elite shot maker at this point of his career. Through the college ranks, he's been shooting the 3-ball highly efficiently. He's one of the best catch and shoot guys right now in the collegiate game, and he's been really willing Alabama's offense. Alabama's been very potent offensively. You think about some of the other players there as well. Javon Quinterly, somebody who I think is a little slept on in terms of his offensive output night in, night out at the collegiate level. But Brandon Miller as a freshman, really has been dominant with his offensive scoring outputs. A lot of people look at Amen Thompson as the guaranteed 3rd overall pick. I'm starting to waver on that a little bit. We're going to talk about that the rest of the draft process here. Nothing's a foregone conclusion. We're in the first week of February at the time I'm recording this. I could feel completely differently 1 week into March and maybe pivot back to Amen Thompson, or maybe Ausar Thompson could even slide up to number 3. I think there's some options for sure for Portland, but I really think Brandon Miller, with his shot making and his ability to stretch the floor as a shooter, fits best into Portland right now, just given who they have on their roster and what they're looking to add. I really like Brandon Miller, which leads us into 4th overall, where the Utah Jazz are now picking. And this, I think, is a really nice fit for them. There's a lot of question marks about this team going into the trade deadline. Are they going to trade Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt? Those of you who are watching after the trade deadline, you're going to know the answers to that, right? Will Mike Conley still be here? How about Colin Sexton? Where are we going to see a guy like I said, Mike Conley or Jordan Clarkson potentially get traded? Will Kelly Olynyk still be on the roster? How about Rudy Gay? There's a lot of questions about the Utah Jazz. There is. I think the answer to this pick, though, is easily Amen Thompson. Just at this point, in most of my mock drafts, he has been the 3rd overall selection. Given the fit here, though, between Portland going with either Brandon Miller or Amen Thompson, I think Brandon Miller makes a lot more sense because of his perimeter-centric game, his ability to score from beyond the arc and inside the arc on jump shots and in contested situations. And for reference, some of you might be wondering why I'm starting to waver on Amen Thompson. These are the reasons why. At this point, again, against prep level players, lower level competition than we would say the collegiate game is. I think that's very fair to say. 54% of his field goal attempts this season have been jump shots for Amen Thompson. On those attempts, he is averaging 0.8 points per possession, shooting only 28.8% from the field. When he's guarded on catch and shoot scenarios, he is shooting 16% from the field. When he's unguarded in catch and shoot scenarios, he is shooting 28% from the field. Off of the dribble jumpers, he's shooting 33% from the field. His runner is his most potent scoring weapon at this point. He is shooting 54% from the field on runners and floaters, which is a very, very good number. But as a 6'7" wing / guard, is that really what we want you doing? Do we want our, big, athletic, dynamic wing having to rely on a floater? The answer to that for me is probably a no. Floaters are a really nice thing to have in your back pocket, but I don't think it can be your number one option. And you might say, oh, that's not his number one option. He's doing other things really well. Layups at the rim on 40 attempts this season. He has made 16 of them, shooting 40% on layups. It's a problem. Amen Thompson has been extremely inefficient, both shooting jumpers, but whether it's catch and shoot, off the dribble, contested, non-contested. His layup game is weak right now. He has all the traits that a team is looking for. He's got really nice playmaking feel. That's the big positive. That's the big upside. That's why he's worth a top 5 pick. The scoring game has to really come around, though. And I'm not just talking about, you watch a highlight reel of him and you really like, the fact that he knocked down 3 jumpers in a row in your highlight clip. Highlights can make a lot of players look really good. You watch a full game of him right now and you kind of think, well, I see why teams look at him as a top 5 guy. But is he there yet? The answer to that is no. Why Utah's perfect for him? They've got plenty of time. They've got plenty of assets. Amen Thompson makes a ton of sense for this team, the direction of this team, and there is star potential in there. With his feel, with his size, he could become a really, really dynamic athlete who can play make for others, attack the rim downhill, and if he starts piecing things together, oh my goodness, could he be really, really good? He's just not quite there yet. Pick number 5, the Houston Rockets, who of course fell in this lottery simulation, find themselves in a very tough situation now, picking outside of the top 4 after essentially losing out in the lottery. They're going to go with one of the Thompson twins, the other one remaining, Ausar Thompson, who is also playing with his twin brother in Overtime Elite. And he's flashed as well. A lot of the stuff I said that was true about Amen Thompson, a lot of that is similar for Ausar as well. He is another player who flashes. Dynamic athleticism, incredible verticality. He's got growing playmaking feel. I don't think he's quite as far as his brother Amen in that regard, but I do think he's growing there for sure. He's more of a finisher when it comes to his transition play right now than a facilitator like we see with Amen, but there's a lot of components to really like when it comes to his potential fit into Houston. They can mold him. Now, I think the most important thing for Houston long-term, even more important than this draft pick, is figuring out a head coach that's going to not only help this team win, but also just help these young players develop. To be honest, I don't see a lot of improvement, and neither does Eric Gordon. Looking at the Rockets roster, things are not getting better. Steven Silas, I think, is right at the center of everything to blame. Houston's, in my opinion, not a great situation right now, but Ausar Thompson, a changing of the guard when it comes to head coach, Houston could get back on track rather quickly. Pick number 6, the Detroit Pistons here now. Of course, they moved down in the lottery as well with 4 teams jumping up. We've seen a lot of these, lesser teams in terms of the win column this year move down. The one thing I'm going to say about Detroit, it's hard to win with no Cade Cunningham. The amount that Dwayne Casey's putting the ball in the hands of Killian Hayes is something that the NBA should investigate when it comes to winning and losing. I just don't understand it. But with being in the top 6 here, you have an opportunity to add a nice fit onto your roster. And a guy I really like is Cam Whitmore. He's an incredible physical athlete who it's hard to stay in his way. Even if you do cut him off on the drive, he's physical enough to bump you off, finish through contact. He's got a really, really nice layup package around the rim, especially finishing off of 1 or 2 feet. I think that's a very important thing to note. Something that Detroit doesn't do a really great job of right now, playing off of 2 feet around the rim. Cam Whitmore does. And I think he gives them kind of that physicality, that brute force on the wing that they need next to some of their other great young players like Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, who I both loved last year. Cade Cunningham, who once he's healthy, hopefully we see him become that 20 to 25 point per game scorer that I expect him to be. Isaiah Stewart, we know he's the physical force as well. I think this is a really good culture setting pick
for Villanova for Detroit with Cam Whitmore out of Villanova. And the other thing is, not only is he physical, he's also got a very quick first step. He's still an explosive vertical athlete. We've seen him play at very high levels throughout his upbringing through the FIBA development program, especially for Team USA, of course. And then this year at Villanova, he's flashed some elements of shot making, shot creation, specifically off of a little step back dribble that he's using to kind of add little components to his game to get shots off in the half court. He's not having a great year, but I think, you know, a lot of people are going to look into that and say, whoa, why do you have him in the top 6 still? Scouting is way more than just he's having an up or down freshman year. Sometimes scouting really goes back to, hey, what was this kid doing when he was 16, 17, 18 years old, especially in some of these camps, junior programs. And Cam Whitmore's been on NBA scouts' radar for a long time. I don't think that they're going to get super scared off by a not super perfect freshman season for Villanova. Pick number 7, the San Antonio Spurs here now. Again, they jumped down. They are on a massive losing streak at the time I'm recording this. This team just cannot win games. They're one of the worst teams in the fourth quarter. Their net rating in the fourth quarter is abysmal. Something else that the NBA should maybe investigate when it comes to Tankgate for Victor Wembanyama. Of course, though, they do not find themselves the benefactors of that here. At pick 7, they have to go a different direction, and I think it's just best player available. Keyonte George, he has been dynamite for the Baylor Bears the last few weeks. I remember a mock draft about a month ago that I recorded where up to that point, Keyonte George just really hadn't found his footing. And I wasn't shying away from him, but I was just a little less confident that he was going to be, a lock into the top 10. Well, as soon as I recorded that video and posted it, the very next day he scored 27. And then the next game after that, he scored 34. It just seems like he's reining in 20-plus point games now for Baylor, and they're winning in the process, which is really important to consider as well. Sometimes empty numbers, they do look impressive at the end of the season when you look back at what a guy's consistent box scores look like. Keyonte George, he's doing it in the flow of the offense. He's doing it to what Scott Drew wants to see for the Bears, and they've had some very good wins in this stretch as well. Some of their losses have been very narrow. The Spurs find a point guard that is way more dynamic offensively than a Tre Jones. And I think the nice thing here is with Tre Jones already on the roster, you have your then starting point guard in Keyonte George and your backup point guard, in Tre Jones for the future. Tre Jones does a very good job limiting turnovers and hunting for his teammates. I think he's a very good facilitator, especially for how young he is. He's going to be a great backup point guard for a long time in the NBA. Keyonte George, though, he has the home run potential. He has the dynamic shot creation elements that you're looking for. He's comfortable shooting from way beyond the three-point line, but he's also got a bevy of dribble moves that he can get into his size up with. He can break you down off the dribble. He knows how to get to the rim when he wants to, and he's not afraid of the big shot either. So I think that Keyonte George is a phenomenal fit here for the for the San Antonio Spurs from the Baylor Bears, and I think he would be a really nice option, 7th overall, which is kind of the sweet spot I'm kind of finding myself putting him in the last couple of mock drafts here on the channel. Pick number 8, the Charlotte Hornets here now with this pick. Of course, the season has not played out the way that they would have liked. LaMelo Ball started the year injured. No Miles Bridges, of course. The whole situation's a little weird. But one thing that I can guarantee you is they've had a very good look at Gigi Jackson from South Carolina, a player who I think is very, very solid. He's one of the younger players, actually the youngest player in this year's draft class, and I think that Gigi Jackson, they have a good look at him playing in South Carolina. The Gamecocks, definitely right next door, one state over from where the Charlotte Hornets play. The scouting department's going to have all the intel on him. And looking at Mitch Kupchak's track record, he likes to draft some of these intriguing, young, polarizing players. Gigi Jackson could be the next iteration of that. Gives you a dynamic athlete who can jump out of the gym. He's also very willing to step out behind the three-point line. Maybe does it a little bit too much at this level for what you'd like to see from him, just given his physical profile, what he should be able to do around the rim in the lane. But at the same time, you like the fact that he's stretching his game, maybe pushing himself for that next level at the NBA level. And I think he's going to be successful because of that. Charlotte gets a really nice young prospect here who, yes, he needs a little bit more time to develop, but you put him next to LaMelo Ball and you should be cooking with gas relatively quickly. Pick number 9, the Orlando Magic here now at this selection. This is their first of 2 selections in the lottery in this mock draft. And the first one here, I think, is a really great fit onto what this current roster is lacking ahead of the NBA trade deadline. And that is some real dangerous shooting from the perimeter. Gradey Dick, I think, is a great option. Dick provides some great length and size as well. Pause. But I think the one thing about him is he's such a dynamic scorer of the basketball, specifically from behind the arc, but he gives you more than that. He's a really, really good and dangerous movement shooter. A lot of the time, Kansas uses him in a similar way that they were using Ochai Agbaji a year ago. They run him off of a bunch of flare screens, pin downs. They run him off some dribble handoff actions. They get him the ball, whether it's moving or in standstill scenarios, after good actual off-ball actions to find him open shots, and he usually hits them. He's shooting well above 40% from 3 this season for Kansas. I have no concerns about his game translating to the NBA level. He's going to be a consistent, reliable three-point shooting threat. And if you actually watch film on him, you're going to see too that he's willing to take a guy 1 or 2 dribbles off the bounce and get into the mid-range area, operate there. He can play off of a bump, a secondary bump, and knock down some shots that way. He's athletic enough to attack the rim. The one concern I do have is he athletic enough with the extra spacing on an NBA court and the extra athleticism, some of the guys he's going to be guarding? Will he be able to stay in front of them consistently? Well, out of all the situations, Orlando is probably the best one for him to land into because they have so much length, defensive upside around him, and they have a very smart coach, in my opinion, in Jamal Mosley, who's going to make the best of this opportunity and really make Gradey Dick successful at the NBA level. I like this pairing a lot. I think this is one of the better fits in the top 10 here. And Gradey Dick, a player who I think he has a wide range. Teams always value shooting, though. I could see him going as low as maybe 15, 16, but I could see him maybe going as high as 7, 8, depending on how desperate a team is to add some real perimeter scoring into their roster. And I think Gradey Dick's a great example of that here at 9 for Orlando. Pick 10, the Washington Wizards here now. Last year, pick 10 wasn't super successful for them with Johnny Davis. I was not the biggest Johnny Davis fan, and I think he's been even worse than I was projecting, even to the point where he's playing for the Capital City Go-Go, and he can't get anything going. In fact, he's been really struggling even at the G League level. So I'm hoping to see him turn his career around. I don't ever want to see any of these prospects fail. I want a lot of these players, all of them, to be honest, to find success and find niches in the NBA for them to be successful, because it just means we have better basketball if everyone's playing well. So that's really what I'm hoping for. Who knows if he can turn it around or not, but here with this pick, I think Washington reconsiders the guard position with Anthony Black out of Arkansas. This is one of my guys in the NBA draft this season. I really like Anthony Black and what he's going to provide to an NBA team. He's such a good passer. He passes with anticipation. The three-point shot has been alive and well for him this year. That was one of the big concerns coming in to college this season. Looking at his film from high school, we knew he was going to be a defensive playmaker. We knew his length and athleticism was going to bother other guards, other perimeter players out when he was defending them out in space. He's also very good at reading passing lanes and getting his hands in the passing lane to actually disrupt some passes. He's a smart, heady player. We knew the passing was going to translate. We knew he's going to be a great combo guard who can handle when you ask him to, can play off of it. He's smart as a cutter, but we were just concerned. Does the shooting translate? Is he going to take a step forward as a shooter? The answer to both of those questions has been an astounding yes this year. He's been fantastic for Arkansas. Eric Musselman's getting the most out of him. In a team that's really fun to watch, to be honest. You look at guys like Ricky Council IV as well. There's just a lot of pieces right now in Arkansas that is playing well. And I really like it for Washington here to add a player like Anthony Black, who I think they should, I think Washington needs to look at the long-term future, to be honest. And I think Anthony Black could be one of those building blocks moving forward. Pick 11, the New Orleans Pelicans here now. This pick comes from the Los Angeles Lakers in the Anthony Davis trade. It's a swap option this year. And the player I have them looking at, we're going back-to-back Razorbacks. Looking at Nick Smith Jr. Now, you've noticed he has fallen significantly from where I had him in my way too early mock, where I had him a couple months ago. The reason for that is some concerns about his knee issues. He has been suffering from a little bit of an injury to his lower extremities that I do think raises somewhat of a red flag for NBA teams. Do they pick him in the top 5 now? Likely not, especially with the ascension of some other players. You look at the Thompson twins, you look at Brandon Miller, of course, Scoot and Victor Wembanyama. That almost feels like the top 5 to me at this point of the year. But, things can still change. I think Nick Smith Jr. is a very, very good young guard still, who is a lead playmaker for an NBA team. He's able to handle the ball, and he's going to be a superior passer. He's going to be the guy that at some point, some team, some coach is going to trust him to be their guy as a distributor, a ball handler, a playmaker for the team. And he's also able to score the basketball when he's needed to. He's got a very nice runner. He's also very adept at working in the pick and roll as a scorer, whether that's in the mid-range. His three-point shot's been a little iffy at times, but I think that with time he could grow into that. When it comes to efficiency, he has been significantly more efficient in a lot of scoring avenues compared to a guy like Amen Thompson. Now, he doesn't flash athletically as much as Amen. He's a little bit shorter. Nick Smith Jr. about 6'4", 6'5" whereas Amen Thompson's about 6'7", and Amen Thompson jumps out of the gym. Nick Smith Jr. a little bit less so. So that is kind of the rationale as to why Nick Smith Jr. goes at 11 compared to Amen Thompson 4th. But I still think the Pelicans here are getting a really, really good player. One that, honestly, they don't need to add, but it's just icing on top of the cake for them, getting a player that good with this selection. Pick 12, the Oklahoma City Thunder here now. Of course, their MO has been drafting guys who can catch, dribble, pass, shoot. They're looking for players who can do all of the essentials on the perimeter, and they're going to find another one here with Cason Wallace, who is a really intriguing combo guard this year. I kind of see him more as a combo wing, a little bit of a blend of a 2-3 at the NBA level. He's about 6'6", 6'7". He's got really good defensive playmaking instincts, and he's just again a heady player. I use that term very affectionately for players that I think are smart and players that I think are going to be successful at the NBA level. Cason Wallace is a perfect example of this. You watch the film, he really reminds me of Marcus Smart, kind of a blend of him and Mikal Bridges. Defensively, he's got, again, like I said, good instincts. He knows how to get his hands in the passing lane, but he's also very smart when it comes to defensive rotations. He's not just an on-ball or one pass away off-ball defender. He's a guy who can bring help side. He's got an incredible wingspan. I mean, look at his arms in the graphic here. He's lengthy. He's pretty much everything the modern NBA looks for in terms of the defensive side of the basketball. Now, I think offensively, he's got to grow his game. He's not a complete offensive player yet at this point, but he's shown flashes. He's had some really memorable offensive performances this season for the Kentucky Wildcats thus far, specifically with his ability to attack in transition, attack closeouts when a defender's off balance. He's very opportunistic as a scorer at this point. The three-point shot is developing. I think that there's a little bit of a ways to go for him yet, but Oklahoma City, you look at one of their most successful lineups this year, SGA, Josh Giddey, Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, the Santa Clara version, and Mike Muscala. It's one of the best lineups in the NBA. To me, Cason Wallace is another Lou Dort in that example where you add another wing type player who can fit next to Giddey and next to Shea and next to J-Dub, and you're kind of cooking with gas. I really like the direction Oklahoma City's headed, and I think Cason Wallace makes them even more exciting on the defensive end specifically. Pick 13, the Orlando Magic, back on the clock now. This pick comes from the Chicago Bulls in the Nikola Vucevic trade. I've talked at length about that trade. I really like where the Magic are at because of that deal. And the first time they had the Bulls pick from that trade, they took a Michigan wing, and they're going to come back and do it again. Of course, the previous one was Franz Wagner. This time around, they're taking Jett Howard, who has been the benefactor of some of those similar sets that we saw Franz Wagner find a lot of success at Michigan with. Specifically, the willingness to catch the ball on the move, already attacking downhill. It's something we've seen Franz Wagner bring to the Orlando Magic and find success doing that at the NBA level. And I think Jett Howard is going to find some of that similar success as well. You know, I think the one thing we can really rely on, I think Michigan wing play is going to be consistently good in the NBA level as long as Juwan Howard's the coach. They run a lot of different sets there. Specifically, you think about their Zoom series, which creates a lot of downhill dribble handoffs for their wings. Jett Howard has been really, really successful in a lot of those roles as a ball handler, as a scorer out of some of these sets. And I think Orlando, you're looking for, more good players. I know that people are going to say, well, Orlando with Gradey Dick, Jett Howard, you didn't really address a point guard. What's going on? They could sniff around Fred VanVleet this trade deadline. They could look at him in free agency potentially. I think it's just about going best player available and address some of your other needs in terms of what's lacking from your roster. Wing depth, you can never have enough of it. And then Gradey Dick provides the shooting that this team badly needs as well. I really like this draft for Orlando. I think it's a little less orthodox than what a lot of people are probably going to look at for them. But I think it's a unique way for them to address some positional needs and also some skill set needs that this roster is lacking. Pick 14, the LA Lakers now with the second pick of that swap option from the New Orleans Pelicans. And with this pick, I have them going with Jarace Walker out of Houston. Jarace Walker has been a consistent lottery selection for me. A true freshman who for Houston has been balling out this season. He gives you very reliable mid-range shot making, off the move, out of post-ups, post fades. Again, another player who I think in his career is going to be very good against defenders using that secondary bump action after, selling a pump fake, drawing a little bit of that contact and then fading out of it. The Lakers, this is a unique fit because Thomas Bryant's been really good for them this year. Anthony Davis has been really dominant at the 5. I see Jarace Walker kind of as a hybrid 4-5 at the NBA level where he plays some small ball center, but he's also somebody who I think could really benefit by being next to a lengthy athletic 5-man. Jarace Walker brings a lot of the physicality that you're looking for into a front court, and he's a positive skill set type player as well, which is what makes the fit here with the Lakers very intriguing. Anthony Davis at the 5, Jarace Walker at the 4, LeBron at the 3. You can already pencil a lot of those things in. As a Mavs fan myself, I'm already worried about Kyrie Irving potentially at the 1 for the Lakers after this season. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Of course, there's a lot to be seen yet in terms of how everything's going to play out. But I do think Jarace Walker is going to be a really nice fit for whatever team gets him. And I think here the Lakers are a really ideal fit. Just putting him next to Anthony Davis in the front court seems really scary for a lot of other NBA teams. Pick 15, the Atlanta Hawks at this spot now. Going to be looking to add some more talent onto that roster. And a guy I like is Kris Murray for them. Again, this is the trade deadline special for my NBA mock draft. So, by the end of the week, is it possible John Collins is playing for a different team? Maybe the Phoenix Suns, or maybe there's a sleeper team that arises in a John Collins deal. I think it's possible. The Hawks have been looking to get off of John Collins basically since they signed him to an extension. And it's possible that it comes this week. Now, am I sold that it will? Maybe not. But here's the thing. Kris Murray's not just I'm taking him because he's a replacement for John Collins. Kris Murray's good, and he's willing to play in a role. He does a lot of the same things that his brother Keegan Murray did last year for Iowa. Of course, Keegan Murray was a top 4 pick. Keegan was a bit better than Kris Murray. He just was. But Kris Murray's really improved as a 3-point shooter. I think he's going to be able to translate just fine to the NBA as a 3-point shooter. We've seen Keegan be a high-volume rookie 3-point shooter for the Kings. He actually leads all rookies in 3-pointers made. And I think Kris Murray can have similar success, probably not to the same volume as Keegan, but he can be a good, solid rotation player in the NBA. And when you're picking outside of the lottery, somebody as safe as Kris Murray almost feels like fool's gold at this point. I think he's a really nice pickup for a team that, again, after drafting AJ Griffin out of the lottery last year, they can find another really nice player outside of the lottery again this draft. Pick 16, the Golden State Warriors on the clock now. And this pick's funny. James Wiseman, who knows what's going to happen with him at the trade deadline? If I had to guess, they don't trade him. But time's kind of running out on that rookie contract. This is an opportunity to see if they can figure it out the second time around with an athletic big man. Dereck Lively out of Duke, somebody who was a top 10 recruit coming in. I was really excited about this kid. And the one thing that you know about Dereck Lively, he is a very dominant, switchable big man. At about 7'2", you would say, okay, this guy's probably not going to be the most switchable big. Wrong. He actually does a great job challenging out on the perimeter. And with where Golden State's currently at, who knows the status of Draymond Green long term? Who knows if James Wiseman's ever going to step up and be worth that number 2 overall selection they spent on him? There's a lot of question marks right now about Golden State's long-term future. I think Dereck Lively, his dynamism, his shot blocking around the rim, he had 8 blocked shots the other night against UNC in that huge Duke UNC rivalry game at Cameron. I mean, he was fantastic that entire game, probably his best game of the season, and he capped off the final offensive possession with a huge putback dunk to basically seal the game for the Blue Devils. Dereck Lively, somebody who I never really sold my stock on. I kept him in the back of my mind for a long time, and he's starting to produce after a very slow start to his freshman season with the Blue Devils. He's starting to play really, really well, and I think Golden State gets a nice, young, intriguing big man who could maybe give them some of the things that James Wiseman has yet to give them at this point of his NBA career. Pick 17, the Utah Jazz. On the clock again, remember they went with Ausar Thompson, 4th overall. This pick comes from the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been on a tear recently when it comes to winning games. And Dariq Whitehead finds himself going here. If you go all the way back to my way too early NBA mock, you would see Dariq Whitehead as a top 5 pick. He was the National Player of the Year at the high school level his senior year of high school. But now in his freshman season at Duke, he has struggled to find his footing consistently. And he is just not shooting the ball as well as he is capable of. To be honest, if you go back, watch his high school film, you would say this kid's going to be one of the best shooters in the nation. And to be honest, the fundamentals, the technique, the framework was all there. That's kind of the expectation I had for him. He just hasn't lived up to that. He has really struggled to put the ball in the hoop. His efficiencies are very, very low right now. Now, he did start the year injured and, missed some time coming in. So there's some reasoning to why he hasn't performed at a high level. I still think he should be worth a first-round pick at this point. And I think the Jazz here get an intriguing upside play on a guy who less than 12 months ago, I think a lot of people were looking at as a lock to be a top 10 pick in the draft. Pick number 18, the New York Knicks here now. This pick comes from the Dallas Mavericks, who owe them this selection, top 10 protected, back from the Kristaps Porzingis trade. And Jalen Hood-Schifino is my selection here. Hood-Schifino has done a nice job this year shooting the 3 ball. Coming out of Montverde Academy, the one question about him was, how consistent is that 3-point shot going to be? We know he can get into the paint. He's very good at getting 2 feet in there and looking to drive and kick or distribute for a rolling big man or a big man sitting on the opposite side of the rim. We know his passing game is going to be solid. We know what he's capable of doing in that regard. But similar to Anthony Black, the question was, what does the 3-point shot look like? And he's got a very repeatable motion. It's very mechanical in a good way, to the point where, like I said, it's repeatable, something you can bank on. And he's really found a rhythm with it this year, shooting over 40% from 3 for a good portion of the season now. Hood-Schifino had a really dominant game the other day, hit 6 threes out of 9 attempts, which was really kind of the game that brought a lot of notoriety to what he's been doing this year. But if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know Jalen Hood-Schifino has been in my first round quite a few times already, and I don't think he's going anywhere. The Knicks, point guard's not necessarily the biggest need, but to be honest with you, the Knicks likely trade these picks anyway, either in a deal for a star player or in a deal where they move them out to future years to keep some of their flexibility open. That's just kind of been the MO of Leon Rose. and Knicks management over the last couple of years. Now with them on the board again, of course, because they seemingly always pick back-to-back in these mock drafts, I have them going with Kyle Filipowski, who has been a very consistent and, to be honest, very good big man for the Duke Blue Devils this year. It might be a surprise to some to see Dereck Lively go before Filipowski. Part of the reason why I mocked that the way that I did in this one, Dereck Lively's got better physicals. When it comes to draft combine season, he's going to jump higher. He's going to have a longer wingspan. He's going to measure taller. He's going to have a higher standing reach. All of those, physicals, all of those tangible little pieces that are going to get measured probably go a long way in making him a selection before Filipowski. But if we're being honest about it, Filipowski's been much more reliable. He's been the better big man for Duke this season. He has a knack for finding the basketball both on the glass and on loose ball scenarios. He can shoot the three ball. He stepped out behind the three-point line numerous amounts of times this season, and he's knocked down a good amount of them as well. He's able to handle the ball a bit. Kind of reminds me of Kelly Olynyk in terms of his offensive game as a three-point shooter, somebody who can drive the basketball from the perimeter and actually has pretty solid playmaking feel as well. I think there's maybe a little bit more upside here than Kelly Olynyk. I think he's got a little bit better defensive feel. I think he's probably going to translate as a slightly better rebounder than Olynyk, but at the end of the day, you're looking at a good player here. The Knicks don't necessarily, again, need this, but they don't have a ton of needs. The Knicks are very, very deep, and I think this is just either icing on top of the cake or potential trade down scenarios for the New York Knicks come draft night. Pick 20, the Phoenix Suns here now, and they're kind of one of those sleeper teams at the NBA trade deadline. I really don't know what to make of them yet at this point. I think there's potential avenues in which they trade some of their top guys, like a Chris Paul in a deal. I think there's avenues where they look to take in a guy like John Collins. You never really know what's going to happen with Phoenix, especially with a new owner coming in. But one thing's for sure here, the value of Terquavion Smith at pick 20 is just too rich to pass on if they're still here at this pick. With the uncertainty around Chris Paul being the long-term point guard now, just given his age and kind of recent play this season, he has picked it up as of late a little bit, but was not looking pretty to start the year. No question about that. So Terquavion Smith, he's a bucket getting type of guard. A lot of people are going to say, well, pick 20, that's kind of low for him. Players like him, they tend to not go in the lottery. It's just kind of the reality of the situation. Now, do I think Terquavion Smith's a very good player? Yes. Do I think he would have been a first-round pick last year if he came out? Probably. He finds himself 20th here. That's, in the top 67% of the first round. It's still a good value pick for Phoenix, kind of the right range of where Terquavion Smith should go. And again, with his ability to get a shot off, he's a high-scoring guard, very athletic. He's got some range to his shot as well. I like him a lot here for Phoenix. I think it's a good value grab on the sophomore guard. 21, the LA Clippers here now. And this pick just screams Lawrence Frank and Jerry West. Emoni Bates from the Eastern Michigan Eagles. Emoni Bates has had some really fun performances this year. Think about the game where he scored 29 straight points for his team. You think about some of the other games where he scores, 35 plus, 40 plus points. His battle with Jarace Walker early in the season. He's had some very memorable performances. His battle against Jett Howard in Michigan, in which he scored 30 plus points and really put himself back on the map as a guy who should be considered a first-round draft pick this year, in my opinion. And I think one thing people need to remember, the way he's playing right now, yes, the volume scoring's there, and you watch him, and sure, maybe he struggles playing through physicality a little bit, and maybe he's not the best driver of the basketball consistently. Maybe he gets walled up, and he's going to be a little turnover prone by leaving his feet. Yes, there's flaws to his game. Start looking at him as a movement shooter, somebody who plays without the ball, plays in a role similar to Michael Porter Jr., or in a role that Gradey Dick is potentially going to play in this year. You look at all of his shooting percentiles, catch and shoot, he's in the top 90%. He's, one of the best catch and shoot shooters in college basketball right now, whether that's off the move or in standstill scenarios. He's also an elite shooter when it comes to percentile rank, when it comes to off the move shooting off the dribble. He's been highly productive as a perimeter scorer this season. He's got incredibly quick burst, for somebody who is listed at 6'10". Now, is he actually 6'10"? If I had to guess, I'd say he's probably a little bit closer to 6'8", 6'9" without shoes. But he's still got NBA length. He's got NBA athleticism, and he's got NBA range. Those are three things that it's hard to find from a prospect you're picking in the 20s. I really love this selection for the Los Angeles Clippers at 21. 22, the Miami Heat here now. With this pick, I'm looking at a guy in Dillon Mitchell, who I think gives them some serious physical upside that other prospects in this class just don't offer you. He's got tremendous vertical. Played actually with Jalen Hood-Schifino at Montverde Academy as a high schooler. And, you know, a lot of people at Texas, when he came in, were expecting him to maybe grow in his role, take a big step forward in what, you know, his coaching staff was asking him to do. That has not been the case. Because of that, his draft stock seemingly has taken a hit. He likely now goes in the 20s compared to the expectations that he could potentially be a lottery selection early in the season. Of course, he will not be a lottery pick, but that doesn't mean he's not a steal or a great pick here at 22 for somebody as athletic as him. Think really, really athletic Jared Vanderbilt. He's going to work off the baseline. He's going to be a putback dunk machine. He's going to work his tail off on the offensive glass. He's going to probably grow into a really solid perimeter defender who can also challenge shots around the rim. There's not a lot of guys like him at 6'9" who have the quickness, the burst, the speed, the athleticism, the verticality, the explosiveness to impact games without the ball in his hands the way that Dillon Mitchell will. I think there's a lot of upside here. I really like his fit off of Bam Adebayo, who, you know, tends to work out of drive situations a lot. Bam Adebayo is actually a very underrated passer, in my opinion, as well. Think about Dillon Mitchell sitting opposite side when you get Bam Adebayo driving downhill at you with his right hand. You know, it's just a little lob pass up to the rim, and Dillon Mitchell is going to know what to do with it. I like this fit a lot for Miami. I really like Dillon Mitchell. He's another example of one of my guys in this year's class. Pick 23, the Sacramento Kings here now. Just one pick off of missing Dillon Mitchell, which would have been a phenomenal fit as well with Mike Brown's corner cutter type offense, where they try and, you know, shoot guys out of the corner a ton on ball movement and high post-ups with Sabonis. He would have been perfect in Sacramento as well. But instead, they're going to settle for Bryce Sensabaugh here. And it's hard to say this is settling. Bryce Sensabaugh has been a very nice shooter at the collegiate level this year. He's really, really proficient in the mid-range game. He loves to take those 12 to 16-foot jump shots. Basically, he claims the elbow as his space. If he gets to that left elbow specifically, he's really tough to deal with. He's got the physical frame, kind of like what we saw from Malachi Branham last year at Ohio State, to take a bump, knock you off of your spot so that he can get to his spot, and then he knows how to finish plays, again, in that mid-range area. The three-point shooting's coming around for him. Now, will he adjust perfectly to the NBA three-point line? Maybe not. I think there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period there. But for Sacramento, this is a really nice upside pick for them, someone who's going to be a proficient scorer off of the bench early on. I see him as a really nice complement to Malik Monk. Malik Monk, you think about his game as, you know, athletic, dynamic, downhill, avoiding contact, finesse finisher who is super bouncy. I think that, to be honest with you, Sensabaugh gives you a lot of the other components. Someone who can play through some of that contact, can slow the game down, get to spots and knock down shots. I think you have a really intriguing off-the-bench backcourt there. Davion Mitchell's already a part of that as well. So, again, probably not the biggest need for Sacramento, but it's a really, really solid player and just honestly too good a value to pass up if you're Monty McNair, who does typically a really great job of drafting. Pick 24, the Pacers back on the board again. Remember, they went with Scoot Henderson, second overall. This pick comes from the Cavaliers in the Caris LeVert trade last year. And Taylor Hendricks is my pick. I know a lot of Pacers fans have been telling me, yay, we want wings. We need wings. We need forwards. I completely agree, but in some mocks, they just haven't fallen to you the way that they needed to. This mock, one of them does, Taylor Hendricks. He had a marquee matchup with Jarace Walker a few weeks ago and honestly got the better of that matchup for a good amount of the game. He's averaging roughly 2 blocks a game right now as a 6'9" forward, can play a little bit of small ball center. Reminds me a little bit of Herb Jones in terms of the role that he's played at the collegiate level for UCF as a freshman compared to what Herb Jones was doing for Alabama as a senior, which you might be saying, whoa, is this Herb Jones 2.0? maybe not. There's definite components that are different. He doesn't have quite the playmaking feel as Herb Jones, and I think defensively he's a little bit more reliant on athleticism instead of positioning and smarts compared to where Herb Jones was. But again, he's multiple years younger than where Herb Jones was when he really started to hit his stride at the collegiate game. I think Indiana here, this is a home run pick for them. Taylor Hendricks is also shooting around 36% from three on the season. So you're looking at a potential athletic 3-and-D type. I think Dorian Finney-Smith plus more upside. That's kind of what I see potentially Hendricks growing into. Now, it's going to take some steps and it's going to take some time for him to get there. But Rick Carlisle's overseen the development of a lot of wings in this league, even including Dorian Finney-Smith. I think that Indiana's a really nice landing spot for Hendricks, and I think ultimately he'll repay them with some really good production down the road as well. Pick 25, the Memphis Grizzlies here now. This team always does a great job drafting, and part of the reason why they really value size and rebounding. Two of the most important things when it comes to winning basketball games. If you can out-rebound your opponent and you can out-physical them on the inside, you have a really good shot at winning games, especially when you have skilled perimeter players like Ja Morant, Desmond Bane around them. Noah Clowney's a hard worker and somebody who he's been awarded with SEC Freshman of the Week honors multiple times this season. He's roughly averaging a double-double this year for Bama. He's been really impactful for them next to Brandon Miller. I think he's a smart defensive player who understands defensive rotations. Now in the NBA, those things get a little bit trickier. The court's a little bit bigger. It's harder to rotate, especially off of non-shooters. The NBA is loaded in terms of talent. So he's not going to be an immediate day one guy. But the nice thing is Memphis doesn't need him to be. They have Jaren Jackson. They've got Steven Adams. They've got Brandon Clark. The idea of selecting Noah Clowney here, I know it's not the biggest need. Ultimately, I think Memphis could look to trade this pick during the deadline. It's very possible we could see this pick get moved for maybe an OG Anunoby or some other wing that could help them win this season. But if they have this pick, Noah Clowney's a guy that they would like to draft and develop. That's one thing Memphis does really well. They don't look at draft picks as a guy that they need to have him contribute year one. They say, what is this guy going to give us by year 3? And I think that they really trust that Noah Clowney could develop into a solid rotational big man for them down the road, which is good value at pick 25. It really is. Pick 26, the Brooklyn Nets here now, of course, the team that's been in the news with the Kyrie Irving trade. I think they did a fantastic job trading Kyrie Irving to Dallas. I think that they maximized value. I really like the fit of Dorian Finney-Smith with Kevin Durant, Royce O'Neal, Nick Claxton, Ben Simmons. They've got switchability. They've got a bunch of different lineups that they can run now. I'm interested to see what they do the rest of this trade deadline. But with their selection, I think Maxwell Lewis is a guy that you could target. He's a shot maker from the perimeter. If you look at Sean Mark's draft history, in the 20s, he likes to take stabs at guys with some serious upside. He did so with Cam Thomas, did so with Day'Ron Sharpe a few years ago. And now I think a guy like Max Lewis out of Pepperdine, a team that just isn't winning a lot of games this year. They're not very good. Maxwell Lewis, in my opinion, right now doesn't impact winning a ton. He's not going to be an immediate impact player for the Nets this season. There's no question about that. His rookie year, he might even, not even play that many games. He's probably going to spend more time in the G League than anything. But I do think that he could develop into a very dynamic, intriguing perimeter scorer at the next level. Now, it's going to take a little bit of time to get there, but I do think that there's some components to his game that you have to like. I think he'll be benefited by more spacing, but he does have to get a little bit stronger. He has to play through contact a little bit better. Some of the same issues that Emoni Bates has, honestly, in my opinion, but I think he's got a slower first step. I don't think he's quite the shooter off the move or off of the catch on standstill opportunities. I don't think he has quite the range as Emoni Bates, but I think he's still probably worthy of a first round consideration, especially around 26 to a team like Brooklyn, who is probably looking more long-term than short-term with some of these draft picks. Pick 27, the Jazz up for the third time. This pick comes from the 76ers through those Brooklyn Nets in the Royce O'Neal trade. And Utah with this selection will consider Kel'el Ware out of Oregon. It's been tough. His minutes have been diminishing lately, even though he's been productive. The Ducks are just clearly trusting him a little bit less and less and less as the season progresses when it comes to helping them win games, despite again, that statistical production. The Jazz say, hey, that's fine. We're not in a rush. Remember, the Jazz, their whole thing here is let's try and build this thing up for 3-4 years from now. Kel'el Ware, he's rather thin right now. He's not going to be a dominant NBA center probably at any point of his career, definitely not early on. The nice thing is you have Walker Kessler. You're looking at Kel'el Ware being a 3-and-D spacing type big man who can play next to Kessler at certain points, offer you a ton of length and size, and it gives Utah some flexibility for down the road if they want to try out Lauri back at small forward every once in a while. If you want to play a triple big lineup of Lauri, Ware, and Kessler. If Kessler figures out his jump shot as well, then you're really spacing the floor. You've got some options. But I like Kel'el Ware here. I think he's still going to garner some first-round consideration. And I think Utah, just given where they're at right now, with the idea of the way they want to rebuild this thing with Danny Ainge, they're going to be patient. They're going to make a pick like this on draft night, if I had to guess. Pick 28, the Houston Rockets. Here I have looking at Jalen Wilson out of Kansas. I really like this selection for Houston. Earlier on, I talked about, Ausar Thompson and the need for a coach, and they just need some older players. And I know in the draft, it's hard to find guys who are older. You're not finding veterans, right? But Jalen Wilson's kind of a been there, done that player for Kansas. With Bill Self, he's learned a lot about the game of basketball, and he's played in big moments. You think about the national championship last year. I think there's a real benefit to adding a guy like Jalen Wilson into that locker room. I think Houston needs more maturity. Drafting another 19-year-old, I think, is dangerous to me. I was already a little hesitant about drafting Ausar Thompson to them, but the talent, the upside is just too high that I figured they have to do it. But Jalen Wilson could be a nice locker room guy for them, and also somebody who knocks down threes consistently. We've seen Self use him a lot off of some flare action, specifically after a handoff. He's been good for Kansas this year, and I think he would be good for Houston next season as well. Pick 29 of the Charlotte Hornets, looking at Jordan Walsh from Arkansas. He's an athletic wing type. Now, I don't love this pick. I think Jordan Walsh is a guy who probably hovers from anywhere around 27, 28 in the draft to maybe about 45. I know that's a really wide range, but at this point of the season, before the draft combine, you have to live with some wide ranges when it comes to the back end of the first round through the middle of the second. That's just kind of the way things are right now. The Hornets, part of the reason why this is a need, no Miles Bridges. And the one thing I think Walsh has really proven is he's an athletic wing who knows how to play off of playmaking guards. He's found success playing with Anthony Black and Nick Smith Jr. this season. I think put him in Charlotte next to LaMelo Ball. I think that you're going to have a really solid natural pairing between those two guys, something that I could see finding success for the next 5 to 10 years, depending on how long LaMelo sticks around in Charlotte. And then pick 30. The Indiana Pacers, I have them going with Rayan Rupert from the New Zealand Breakers. He's a French wing. And Pacers fans, don't worry, I got you this time. We're going to make sure you get some wing options, something you need, especially with Scoot Henderson in the building. You need some more wings now, especially with Miles Turner locked down on that brand new renegotiated contract that had that 2-year extension built in. I think the Pacers, if they can figure out some of these wing spots, and if they get lucky in the draft lottery, they are really, really set to make some noise sooner than later. I love Tyrese Halliburton's game. Rayan Rupert, I think he's got a ways to go. I think he's a development project, same as Taylor Hendricks a little bit. But when you're picking in the 20s and now 30s, it's hard to find guys who are going to be consistent day one options for you. Jalen Wilson would have been a guy considered for them here. We saw them find success with an older prospect in Andrew Nembhard in the 30s in this past draft. So potentially something that they could look to do when it comes to considering older players, older prospect guys who are, maybe 22, 23 years old at the time of the draft. We've seen them do that before with Chris Duarte as well in the lottery. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I think Rayan Rupert, the physicality, the athleticism, the downhill speed, ability to handle the ball in transition, those are some of the factors that maybe make you think Rupert could have a nice future in this league as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Leave a like. It lets me know I did a good job and that you really enjoyed watching the video. And then also don't forget, check out the live. I'm live on the channel for the NBA trade deadline all week long. So make sure to check that out. Really excited to cover the NBA trade deadline intensively
with a ton of focus on all 30 NBA teams. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, again, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on that notification bell, check out the live stream, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.